Wow, what a fantastic discussion there. Just the other day, I was discussing this lovely quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that women belong in all places where decisions are being made. Could we kind of redefine that proposition to say, diversity belongs in all places where decisions are being made? Moving on, a segment for panel discussion, and I'll call upon the stage our speakers with a brief introduction, and could I request the speakers to please come on as I call out their names. Firstly, I would like to invite Mr. Nitin Razdan, who is partner and head of human capital practice at Deloitte South Asia, with a team of over 1,000 professionals. Nitin has worked in over 25 countries in North America, Latin, Europe, Africa, Middle East, and Asia. He advises management, strategic workforce planning, and talent development. His industry expertise spans a variety of sectors, including retail, telecom, healthcare, media, metals and mining, banking, government, and non-profit. Welcome. Could I now request Ms. Neera Saggi to join us? Ms. Saggi has worked for 28 years as the member of Indian Administrative Services and subsequently with Larsen & Toubro, giving her rich experience both in public and private sector. Since past 2 decades, she has been on boards of multiple corporates and non-profit organizations and has been deeply associated with area administration, rural and urban development, health and family welfare, and export promotion. Incidentally, Ms. Saggi is also the first woman president of Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, at which point she launched Fem Power, an association to enhance women participation in workforce, and continues to be associated with gender development at multiple levels. Welcome. May I now request Ms. Parimala Bhat, founder and chairperson of Snehankit Helpline, which empowers visually challenged students. She has been the honorary secretary of the National Association for the Blind, in charge of Women's Welfare Department, senior manager at Air India in the Medical Services Department, and social worker at the Kamla Mehta School for the Blind. She was the first lady with visual impairment to represent India at a leadership summit organized by the Swedish Federation, wherein she presented a report on situation of blind women in India. She has undergone an adventure training course in mountaineering and participated in Himalayan expedition with a group that scaled 17,500 feet in Manali. Next, could I please have on stage Mr. Parmesh Shahani, head of Godrej DEI Lab at Godrej Industries, an experimental space that aims to empower inclusion ecosystems both within and outside the Godrej group. Prior to this, between 2011 and 21, he founded and headed the Godrej India Culture Lab as a multi-year interdisciplinary project which examined the ever-changing nature of Indian society. Parmesh's first book, Gay Bombay, Globalization, Love, and Belonging in Contemporary India, was released in 2008. His second book, Queeristan, LGBTQ Inclusion in the Indian Workplace, was released in 2020 and conferred with the C.K. Prahlad Prize for Best Business Book, as well as the Ladli Media Award for Gender Sensitivity for 21. Parmesh is a TED Senior Fellow, a Yale World Fellow, a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, and a board member of Khoj International Artists Association.
Thank you for the kind introductions, and again a very warm welcome to everyone. I must say it's an honor and a privilege on behalf of Deloitte to be a part of this very, very distinguished and special event, which means so much to us as a firm and to me personally. And again, welcome to the fellow panel members here. It's a privilege to be hosting this discussion for you. I'll maybe start with Parmesh, and I think a lot of mention about the Queeristan book already. But Parmesh, your few takeaways in terms of lessons from the book for corporate India to create a more inclusive workplace for LGBTQ. Top headlines from your perspective.
So just building off a lot of what Nisa said already, I think how you convert your intention into actions. We've had great success in embedding a lot of change structurally, right? So everything from putting a very specific percentage of senior leaders' goals. You put a percentage on the goal sheet, it means they have to dedicate that much amount of time. All the way down to just seeing everything, how recruitment takes place, how people, our people, diversity is just in terms of numbers, right? Engagement is, inclusion is how everyone who's in is feeling, is thriving, is being able to flourish, is being able to grow. So I think just one lesson from the book, and indeed in the experiments that we've conducted over the past few years as Godrej, has been that comprehensive inclusion is always better. And changing structures is always better than just doing things opportunistically. So it's Pride Month, but companies that care about LGBTQ individuals are active all the remaining 11 months of the year, not just during June as well, because queer people don't stop existing, for example, in the remaining 11 months, as is the same, say, with women, for example. March is not only when you should be honoring or shining the spotlight on women in your organization, it should be all around the year as well, right? So I think one big takeaway is that if you care about this, and everyone who's in the room and the Bombay Chamber who's facilitating this, is how can you really embed structural inclusion? So it is in changing policies, it is in changing systems, it is in looking at, what are the biases that exist and how can you systematically and structurally dissolve some of these. It is in really doing the hard and deep work. The other thing I would say is that really in today's world, you want to become the kind of place where we're living in a very, very challenging world. It's only going to get more challenging, right? You want to be that kind of place that you don't want to go looking for talent. You want to be so extraordinary that talent gravitates towards you. And this is again something that we found in the 10 years of the work that we've done. In the previous panel, there was a question as to, where you recruit from if you want LGBTQ, right? I mean, our friend from Dow asked us that. Thankfully at Godrej over the past few years, we've not had to do that because of constantly doing work, because of constantly improving, whether it's policies, infrastructure, because of constantly celebrating our queer employees, of shining the spotlight on them, because of collaborating with queer organizations, helping them through CSR and things like that. We are known, so we get a steady stream of resumes without even trying. Perhaps someone from your company as well might have reached out to us. The whole point is, in today's world, if you become that beacon, if you become what Nisa said earlier, as an island of hope and opportunity, you will yourself. So if you do enough work for enough time, you yourself become that kind of island in which people are themselves coming and wanting to work, and people recognize that you're the kind of place where they want to come and thrive, and they can have incredible careers, but they can also help create a better India and a better world as well. So I think both these mindsets, change structures, think of the long term, think about how you can become that island of hope and excellence, is something that at least everyone in this room should really want to do. And I think the Bombay Chamber of Commerce can play a very, very important role in this. And you as Deloitte, for example, I love the work y'all are doing, for example, right? Y'all have incredible policies. I visited your offices in Hyderabad. You have out and proud, happy and thriving queer employees. This Pride Month, you've lit your entire building in the rainbow colors to kind of showcase your commitment. You're not just, are you capitalizing on Pride Month and saying we want to do rainbow stuff? Yeah, but it's building on so much of the other stuff that you're doing, and obviously people recognize that you're the kind of place that they want to come to. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. And Parmesh, I must also say for me, what resonated from what Nisa was earlier talking about is extending the lens of inclusion into your business models, into your customer design, into your market research, right? Building inclusive and products and services for the wider customer base you serve. So, not only does this become imperative from a culture perspective, but it actually translates into wider markets, wider access, better business results. So, thank you for sharing that. I would now move to Ms. Bhat and Parimala ma'am. Thank you again for being here. I guess the question I would have for you would be, when you think of when you think of corporate India and your sort of recommendations of how underrepresented or marginalized communities can get better access to healthcare, basic infrastructure, what are the 2 or 3 things corporate India can do to enhance that experience for the marginalized communities?
Yes. Our group, marginalized youth community, really goes through a very tough time. They have to face so many challenges. First of all, the groups living in remote areas, they have no access to anything for education, for healthcare, for housing, and this really creates a pathetic situation for them to participate with normal society, mainstream society, I would say, not normal. Even these groups are normal. So I want to tell you one thing, that because of lack of facilities or services, they have no transport, they have no education. I'm talking about the people staying in remote areas. And this leads to ignorance, lack of knowledge, lack of confidence, lack of leadership. There are primary health centers, but there are no doctors, proper treatment given. So here I would like to suggest that corporates can have some small mobile clinics, mobile vans, or start a telemedicine where doctors, they do not have to travel for small things to urban areas. There itself, doctors can create telemedicine and give the results what the patient is suffering from. Unless it's a big serious disease, they can be referred to hospitals. Education, I would like to say that these groups, because the society's outlook is negative, these groups are ignored, they are neglected, and this creates, they lose their confidence, and it creates frustration. So if corporates can, through their marketing channels, create awareness among the society that these groups are also the part of society, and they should have inclusion in every whatever facilities are given by the society, especially healthcare. I would like to give an example about persons with disability. When we go to the hospital, it's very difficult for us to go alone to the hospital because we have no one to talk to us or help us which department or which counters to go and how to fill up the forms, because too much of crowd, and no one knows how to guide disabled persons, especially visually challenged and people who are on wheelchair. They do not have idea. So I would like to cooperate to help us in this way, that liaison with the hospitals or stakeholders and have some facilities where we could be helped by them, and volunteers through corporate sectors who will guide us which counter to go or which proper specific department to be guided. And if corporates need some help, they can take the help of NGOs, many NGOs. So even our NGOs can help the corporates to how to guide or how to train the staff in the hospital. Education also we face that we do not get admissions. Our children do not get admissions in private schools or other schools because they do not want to take efforts. The teachers refuse to take blind child or other groups, marginalized community groups, because they do not want to take any efforts, or the outlook, negativity is shown by the teachers and the schools. There are few schools who take us for the admission to our children, for our blind children and other groups. But many of times it happens that admissions are refused. So here even corporate sectors, they have their marketing channels through which they can have some program, awareness programs in the society and make the people understand the difficulty that blind child or other groups are not different. They can do everything by themselves, only they need support and opportunities. If opportunities are given, they can reach to higher level and they can reach the Everest also. There are so many things I would like to say, that because these groups are staying in remote areas, they have no facilities. Transport, how do you expect the transport to take disabled persons in the bus? Or theaters, where there are no ramps, there are no proper roads. So I would like the corporates to take up this matter also with the stakeholders and sort out this problem. Railway stations, new railway stations are renovated, but there are no ramps. And also cinema theaters. How do you expect a disabled person to go and enjoy the theater or music programs? So these groups are just in the house, sitting in their own homes and watching TVs, but not attending the programs with their friends and enjoying the entertainment program. There are so many problems faced by these groups that they are always neglected, especially transgender. When the person comes in the train also, I have seen the people, the way they behave, the way they look at these people, it's very sad. They are human beings. The people should understand and do not have a negative attitude towards them. Even when a blind child, I have seen, I have a student who was going with her mother, and on the road, the other person is remarks, "Arey, isko kyun laya idhar? Iska kya fayda hai? Ye kya dekhega?" The mother felt so bad, and luckily I was with the mother, and I had to explain those people in the train, "Arey, she is also like you all. She can also enjoy. You can have to just tell her what is happening around us." This is what is the society outlook towards all these marginalized groups in our country. So I want corporate sectors to have some programs for awareness programs for people to understand the difficulty and how they have to face challenges because of the society's outlook. The corporate sectors have to, sometimes I feel we have people who have financially weaker sections. So if corporates can have some like insurance for these people who cannot afford or whose income status is very low. Anything else I have to say?
You summarized it very well, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for that. And you know, I must say, before the event, I was having a quick 5-minute catch up with Ms. Parimala here. And I mean, two things struck me in that 5-minute chat, right? One was, we as a firm, and Deloitte India, we have more than 130,000 people employed in India. And she asked me, what are you specifically doing for visually impaired? And I said, look, I'm not aware. And, you know, for me, it was a big action point. You know, I need to go back and talk to our leadership tomorrow about what we can do. And the other thing which struck me was, there's so much talk about AI, and the extreme view is, of course, that it's the end of humanity. It'll replace everybody in the room. But, you know, the more optimistic view is, you know, can it be used as a force for good? You know, when you look at visually impaired or marginalized communities, can you use technologies like AI as a force for good in the workplace to equip them, skill them better so that they can perform at a level playing field in the corporate workplace? So some interesting insights from just that 5-minute conversation. So thank you for that, Ms. Bhat. I'll now move on to Neera. And Neera, I think, you know, you've had the privilege of being, of course, in the government, but then serving as an independent director on several boards for the longest time. In your view, how has the conversation in the boardroom on DEI shaped up and inclusion shaped up? What are boards doing well and what do they need to do better?
Thanks, Nitin. Let me start it with a more positive note, that what the boards have already done. One sees, especially in the respect of gender, the needle moving up in regard to certain corporates, and I'm purposely using the word certain. It might not be all inclusive in all the corporate business world, but in certain areas it's moving. But like now, Parimala ji very rightly pointed out, whether in the entire diversity sector the needle has moved or not, I would not be able to comfortably assert that. Keeping this in mind, we do see that corporates have become increasingly conscious of at least projecting that they are diverse friendly. And a lot of town halls are taking place around that. The CEO is very conscious of convincing the board that, look, I am very diversity conscious. All these things are taking place. And they have their impact because the funders, people like, who are associated as outside stakeholders with the corporates are increasingly making that as a mandate. And that gets reflected in how the board conversations and the corporate conversations take place. However, the question really is, what you have posed to me is, what could they do better? And I would like to identify that in 3 steps, or rather related to 3 parts of the corporate. I'll start with the board, the NRC, and the corporate as such. Let's look at the board first. What does the board send as its feelers? I mean, who composes the board? I would say that the Companies Act is a very powerful mandate which has given to the board itself to choose its own board members. It's no stipulation on them except one, that you should have a woman director. Beyond that, who does the board look at? Where is the talent pool that it looks at from? Is it from its own networks? What does it do? And when you look at your own networks, you have to be very conscious of the fact that these are not societal neutral. They only come from your perceptions, your bias, and the people that you know and who surround you around it. The second I would say is that board, how does it react in a board meeting? For example, how many times do we always ask that why don't I sue, except the woman board member, any other person in the board, whether it's from the management or it is associated to the management. It's very rare, except you auditors bring a lot of women along with you, but it's very rare that even the second level from the finance or from the HR is a woman who is represented in the board. And does the board really make it obvious, or rather talk about it? We always talk about margins. We repeatedly say, why is the needle not going up where the margins are concerned, where your profits are concerned, where your sales are concerned? But except for the NRC or occasional conversation, it is not a regular matter that we highlight, that there's no gender, there's no diversity around in the board. So that we ourselves as a board are laying that perception which very fast travels outside. Now let me try to come to the NRC. I think all NRCs today in most corporates are laying down very fine numbers. I want 10%, I want 15%, by what time are you going to increase it? And the mandate is only on the HR, that you do it. But who's the champion within the organization to ensure that? And also, who assesses that why has this number not been there today? What are the affinity biases that have already existed in the organization that has ensured that this doesn't take place? Or rather that has stopped, or rather been a firewall to have more diversity around. So unless you address that, you are not going to really hit the number or even achieve what you want to say. The other thing is that where is the assessment? That if I have asked for this number, how much of that retention has taken place? If some more diverse candidates have joined, how many of them have been trained? How many of them have got their promotions? How many of them have really stayed on and there's less attrition from their side? That kind of continuous assessment is never there. Only the initial number is tracked and we tend to go about it. Since you asked me that what the board, NRC or the board needs to do, I think these regular trackings is something that they need to work out. And the other thing I would like to say is their strategy. Whenever we are talking of strategy of increasing diversity, exactly, are we conscious of the fact that this costs money? Are we conscious of the fact that this needs patience? Because you might have to ask the recruiting firm to get you diverse candidates again and again and again. But in case you're going to go and tell the HR person all the time, why is the person not placed? Why have you not filled up this position? Then obviously you're trying to put on a pressure which he might or she might not be able to control. So where is that in your strategy for diversity? Have you built in the patience? Also, with all the laws that have come in, today diversity costs money. Whether you have to create the POSH committee, whether you have to create creches. Now, are you building that in? Are you conscious of that? And are you sure that you want to accept it? And if so, then what is your realistic number and how are you going to achieve it? And then let me come down to the corporate itself, the corporation, the company itself. You might get the numbers, but do you get the culture? Is your company a psychologically safe place to work in? Now, how do you assess that? Do you hear the women's voices? In no company that I've come across, there is a women's association. I always tell the women employees that I work with, I interact with, that you have a women's guitar. You sit down alone, you converse, you have your your lunches together, you talk about your families, you crib about the policy, but there's no voice that you have created which walks up to the HR. The only person I know is the MD's private secretary or the secretary who hears all this, and if she's a lady, she will sort of slowly fill in his ears and say, ye nahi ho raha, ye ladies are a little upset about. But there's no cohort who's talking about it. So if you're not hearing to that voice, how are you going to address it? I really don't understand that. So this kind of an assessment, this kind of a culture which ensures that diversity is considered as an integral part of the organization. And the last point I want to say is that a lot of regulations, a lot of policies have come under a lot of internal psychological criticism. You hear a lot of people saying that this POSH Act is a nuisance. Many women are, raising unnecessary questions or unnecessary burden when you have to see that they have to be safely reached home. It's an unnecessary burden on the company. What is your policy to ensure that these things are considered as an integral part which supports your organization and help it to flourish and not be considered as a burden on you? And the last is that is your CEO really a champion of diversity? Are you assessing it properly, or are you only hearing what he's telling you in the boardroom?
He or she.
Your CEO.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Neera. And I think, in summary, to me, the big headline was the companies which have really moved the needle on this. They've moved from an approach of being, DEI being programmatic, HR-led initiatives to, being led straight from the top, from the chairperson, from the board. That seems to be the big takeaway. And you have to focus on both the hardware and the software. Hardware being the numbers, the dashboards, the metrics, the ratios, but the software being the mindsets, the culture, and that probably takes a little bit more time to change. So last sort of 30-second question for each of you. And again, corporate India has traveled a journey. We're a lot, I would say, better off than we were, 10 years ago on this topic. What would your wish list for the next decade be, 2030 and beyond? So like, what would be the one thing you would want to see in corporate India? And I'll go to each of you. Maybe, Param, we can start with you.
I'd like to see corporate India look like the rest of India, look like the rest of the world. I'd like to see within DEI conversations as well. Besides everything that we spoke, and Neera, board level, it's exciting that all around the world, whether with NASDAQ, I have friends who are creating associations of LGBTQ board directors, enthusing companies, for example, to have more LGBTQ, and there are so many more efforts for other groups to be. So I would like to literally see every aspect of corporate India reflect the rich diversity of the world outside, which means 50% women, which means 6 to 10% LGBTQ, persons with disabilities, and so on. In this country, we have so many kinds of diversities. In companies and in spaces like this, gender, PWD, LGBTQ are easier to talk about. There are other kinds of diversity, whether it's religion, whether it's regional, whether it's caste, and so many others, which are not often spoken about in corporate or other spaces, but I would very much like to see I would like to see our companies literally being microcosms of, the society we live in, and these different stakeholders we serve. So to me, everything we do, if we can really move towards that, it will be a win-win scenario, because we will be more inclusive in terms of who we have on board. We'll understand better on who we have to serve. And I think it's win-win in the sense of we'll be doing better as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Ms. Parimala, your wish list, one item.
Same subject, same question.
Your wish list in terms of one thing, if you look at, let's say, 2030 as a horizon, one thing you feel that you would want to see in corporate India from a DEI perspective.
From DEI perspective, I would like the corporates to help us in all the children who are going to schools or colleges should be well versed with computer knowledge, and they all get jobs in corporate sectors with confidence and knowledge of computers with advanced Excel. So they do not have to be frustrated because no jobs, and they will have so many options of jobs. And also I would like to see that all the books, they do not have to depend on audio books. All the books, whatever libraries we have, all the books are in accessible format with the help of corporates.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And concluding question to you, Ms. Neera. Your wish list, ma'am.
I'm not a great believer in numbers. Normally we tend to miss the numbers. Also, we tend to, even numbers can be misrepresented. Ideally, I would have liked to say at least 30%. In 1991, we had 27-28% women in workforce. We've come down to 22-21, at least 30%, but leave that aside. What I would really wish is that the corporate India still is moving on. It's trying to create policies, it's trying to encourage diversity, but back socially, we are not able to support these people to reach their potential, whether it's women or it's a more diverse candidate, because there's so many impediments back in the society. Some of these can be overcome by, certain facilitative measures that either the corporate India or the government can put in. And I'm talking of things like childcare. I'm talking of safety in transportation. I'm talking of these very basic things that at least give the woman, and sorry I keep on talking about women because that is the area that I have most interacted with, that can give them to some extent a more level playing field to work from, which is now essential. After that, I do hope that the pipeline would increase substantially, because unless the pipeline doesn't increase, you're not going to have them either in senior positions or encourage other women to come up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we have quite a journey to traverse, but thank you all for a wonderful, engaging discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
May I please have Meenakshi and Ms. Pinky Mehta on the stage to present the mementos.
Give me your hand. Would you like to? Sure. Yeah, no, I think they're coming there.
Thank you so much. What a fabulous session. Thank you. Very nice.